Well, very obviously there is Joomla 3.5 to be released in March 2014. The period that we're in now is 3.2 is the last opportunity for any new features, any sort of innovation to be included in the 3.x series. So once 3.2 is released, there are effectively no new features, certainly not at a big level. There might be little ones which sort of address issues. So 3.5 is effectively going to be the last bug-fixed version of 3.2 that was produced. So if that was 3.2.4 or something, that might be put out in February. 3.5 will effectively be that copy, maybe plus a few extra features. So what you've got in 3.2 is pretty much what you're going to have for the long-term supported version, which is 3.5. And 3.5 is supported somewhere through to Q3 2016. Joomla 4 is still an unknown entity at this stage, but we have a working group which is talking about distributions. I mentioned that earlier. The idea of distributions is that the one-size-fits-all model of downloading one zip file and expecting that to suit everybody, I think is fundamentally flawed because everybody's different, and we can do something better. It would be really nice if you could go to the downloads page of Joomla and say, I'd like articles, I'd like banners, I'd like a forum solution, I'd like a shop, and a mailing list. Yes, please. Click on that, click the download button, it assembles it for you, and you get a zip, and you can install that, and all of these extensions are pre-installed for you. That's one concept behind distributions. Another concept is we just have, as a project, bake the distribution. So there's Joomla Classic, which includes banners and web links and news feeds and a whole host of other things that you probably don't use. There's Joomla Lite, which is our WordPress killer, which is just a blogging platform. There's Joomla Heavy for the developers, which includes the JED extension checker, includes a component builder and a host of other things. So this is sort of the idea behind distributions. We're talking about changing from having this magical 0.5 being a long-term supported version to having rolling versions. One of the problems we've seen recently, particularly with 3.2, is there was a massive, and you've seen we've had more features in 3.2 than we've had for a very long time. And that's because there was this feature deadline. It's the last chance to include anything. And it caused a lot of pressure because people were dropping big extensions with lots of code 4 days before the deadline and saying, we need this approved. And we run on volunteers, and some of the code wasn't quite up to scratch, and then people get offended. It's not because it was a bad idea, it just wasn't ready. So wouldn't it be nice if we just take that away? So the idea of rolling versions is we can do a 4.1 when we need it, not when the calendar says. We can do a 4.2 when something comes out at 0.3. We might get up to 4.75. But the idea is that the 4.x series is supported for as long as people are interested in supporting it. And then there's a time where we can say, hey, there's nobody interested in doing anything more new for it, or Joomla 5 is starting to be thought of, or has already been cranking along for some time, and we want to retire Joomla 4, and then we say, look, there's a mandatory period of 18 months, 2 years, whatever, where we only provide security fixes, and that sort of becomes the long-term support. So just changing our versions so that we're not having this panic before every 6 months, which is what we've seen in the 3.x series. in the 1.6, 1.7, 2.5, it was all okay because we were still refactoring things and still making everything consistent. But in 3, we sort of solved a lot of those problems, and people are actually adding completely new features, which is great, but it just means the current version model has to change again. But that's life. Interestingly enough, Ubuntu is going through exactly the same pain that we're going through. It's just that we didn't cheat off them this time, which is good. We have in the past, which is okay. The other thing, and this is just a personal thought, is I would like to see fewer extensions with greater collaboration. For me, there's no need to have 16 different versions of a CK editor plugin for Joomla on the jet. There's no need for 20 different commenting solutions. Why can't we have one version where the community is all working on that? And if people either are ticked off with the team or they think they can do better, then go and do your own version. But I think I'd like to see with distributions that there's the idea that people can work on a semi-official thing. Like Kanina might say, hey, we don't want to act on our own anymore, we're just going to call this the community-supported Joomla forum, and everybody works on it. And it sort of becomes this unofficial, officially unofficial sort of supported component. Again, that's something just I'd like to see. It's a little bit Drupal-esque, it's the way Drupal works. The difference between us and Drupal is I think we still need to keep our culture of flexibility and people being able to do the things that they want to do, and that's where our JED comes in. So if you want to do something different, you can post it on the JED. You want to do something commercial, you can post it on JED. Last thing here I want to talk to is I've got to have the responsive word in my talk somewhere, because this is a responsive thing. But it's just to sow some seeds about what is called adaptive content. We have responsive design, which is sort of sliding the browser and seeing the things change. There's a vernacular term I use for that, but I'll be where I can. But this idea of adaptive content is starting to come out. People like Karen McGrain, look her up. She talks a lot about this adaptive content. The example that she gives is the TV guide. If you look at and the EPGs that you have on your home theatres and that sort of thing. But even in printed form, the TV guide, a glance at a month, had a title and a particular snippet of text that fit in what was a very large matrix. The weekly view might have a slightly longer title and some more informative text. And then with the ability to use our EPGs, we can go into what's this movie about. There's a title. There's quite a lengthy spiel about it. There might be a link to IMDb, when it was produced, and that sort of thing. And it's this idea that content needs to adapt to the format and the place where it's shown. So a website built for a browser on a desktop or a projector or that sort of thing. We have real estate to work with. But if I'm on my 4-inch phone, I have much less real estate to deal with. And it's not a matter of just the template responding to the size of the device. The content also needs to respond. Some of the big media companies in America are trying to deal with this. And a simple example is the size of the thumbnail could be larger on a normal browser, but quite small and potentially in a completely different location when on the mobile device. And you can do a bit with CSS, but this goes beyond CSS, particularly when If you're on a mobile device and you want shorter descriptions that aren't just cheating and truncating it, put ... after it, actually having sensible content. I think that's one of the things that we need to address in Joomla. And how that would manifest in the article manager, for example, is lots of different options for the different fields. So we would have the normal title. We'd have the short title, which would display on very small screens. You'd have a longer title, which somebody might want to display in a 1,000-inch TV that's in Times Square or something like that. We have 3 different variations of intro text. A short version, or a medium version, or a longer version, depending on the device that you're actually looking at. And that gives both the template and the engineer designing the system the ability to say, hey, there might be better content to display on this size device because, one, I'm using to flick through and find out the headlines and a short description, and another one I'm reading the full article. So that's my responsive thought. It needs to be more than just CSS and JavaScript tricks. We do a little bit of it in the Articles Manager with, there's some images and things like that. There's a little bit of support there. And to be honest, intro text and full text gets us a little way, but I think we can do a lot more. But again, it would take some thinking and some new blood to work out how we can do that. Almost there. So I just want to throw a few thoughts on, in terms of the future of Joomla, well, what do I do if I'm on 1.5? What do I do if I'm on 2.5? What do I do if I'm on 3? If you're on 1.5 and the site is working for you, don't bother changing. There is a guy by the name of Phil Taylor has set up a repository on GitHub to collect the most important security updates that have been found in 1.5 since it was end of life. So it's basically in palliative care, but there are some people. There are some people sort of still maintaining out there. If you're wanting to move, so if you're on 1.5 and you're wanting to migrate, now is a good time to be making that decision. You should probably be jumping straight to 3. You shouldn't be going to 2.5 because 2.5 is coming up for end of life as well. The thing that's going to kill you moving out of 1.5 and potentially 2.5 as well is the template. Joomla 3 is Bootstrap. Joomla 2.5 is our own homegrown, strange and poorly documented system. And that goes on to, if you're wanting to upgrade from 2.5 to 3, from what I'm aware, you won't have a problem with the extensions, but you will have a problem with your template. The template is a major migration. The site is just what they call a one-click upgrade. As for 3, what if you do on 3? Well, we're going into long-term support. So if you're on that, you're quite okay. 4.0, we have absolutely no idea what it's going to be. We have no idea whether there's going to be breaking change. There is certainly talk about upgrading to Twitter Bootstrap version 3. Joomla 3 is on Bootstrap 2.0, but that introduces some complexities, problems, and a whole host of madness for component developers who now have to, some of which are still supporting 1.5, so they need layouts for 1.5, 2.5, 3.0, and potentially something completely different in 4.x. Which I'm advocating, by the way, but that's a conversation. If you're interested in talking about distributions, I've got a bit of an open forum this afternoon on that. So, yeah, So 1.5 to anything, it's a big migration. There are good migrators out there to do something. 2.5, your biggest bugbear is a template. If you're using a stock standard Joomla, just upgrade to 3 and use it and try and find a template that suits you. Okay, the last profound thought, and there's a shameless plug for my site. So that here endeth the lesson for today. There's probably a few minutes for questions, unless you're really hungry like me. We've got 5 minutes. We can just go to the morning tea, and you quite, by all means, come and nab me later on if you've got questions. Yes, no.
Andrew, the concept of why you think we need push button, I want this, I want that, I want this, make a little package that's all dreamy and airy-fairy. What's the thought behind that? Why do we need that?
Why do we need distributions that are tick and flick? Personally, I just think it's really cool.
What's the business case that says that we need that?
I haven't got a business case to do it, but it's sort of a bit like the moon landing. If the moon's there, and I think we can do it, and why not? The way that we're talking about splitting up the distributions, again, it's early days, and I don't want to say that my way is the right way, because I'd like to see a number of different proposals, because there's a lot of people it will impact. It's just one of the ways I think distributions could go. So I'm sowing a seed of how it could be approached. It may not be the best solution. The playlist idea that I thought of in the JED might be a much better distribution. But the way that we actually design the distributions will be able to should be able to support that type of granularity where people can just go in and pretty much dial the Joomla that they want. It may not be totally useful for the end user that's just getting into Joomla for the first time, but for the regular site builder, particularly if there's an API behind it as well, that they can you can build scripts to install to connect to our distribution builder, and it'll just whack it on your Rockin' site or SiteGround or whoever's hosting. If we have an API for other people to plug into, that will be really interesting. The key part of it, the important part of that though, is having a registry or a directory of what can make up distributions now. That's what I'm particularly interested in, so that, again, we can get this idea that people can get behind maybe supporting less versions of the same thing. It could also be that third parties could register their own extensions. So the JED may be able to say, an extension developer can say, tick, this is distribution compatible, and the Joomla site has a distribution builder that, I can add a Keeper backup, I can add ASCII mailing as well. And it's we're not over the moon about saying, it's not part of the Joomla program.
I think the socialist ideal of having less competition is not something I'd like to see. But I think the open path solution, where you go a little bit like the iTunes solution, you go to open path, you buy the extensions for open path, I think that could definitely be something that could work.
I wouldn't like to say I want to reduce competition, but I would like to see reduced duplication particularly when you've got one or two major offerings there. They're putting out a free base product anyway. Let's just make that a core offering, and not a core offering, but something that can be officially registered, and let the competition I think. Let's have less but more fierce competition between things, and just not reinventing extensions because we can.
I've got a marketing question. You mentioned earlier in the talk about the top 3 CMSs having sweet spots. In your view, what are the sweet spots of each of them?
What are the sweet spots of each? Okay, so WordPress is really, it's easy to get into because there are a lot of sites, blogger.com, there's a lot of places where you can just dial up your own WordPress. You don't even know that you're using WordPress, really. And you can get into it quickly, and it fits a certain mindset. It doesn't fit my mindset exactly, but it helps people get up and running quickly. Drupal, on the other hand, its sweet spot is people who, for consultants that want to continue to maintain something, so you have to come back to the consultant to do heavy sort of maintenance, any sort of customization and that sort of thing. There's a high learning curve on the administration and the UI. My personal view is it's deliberately kept there for a reason. They don't make it easier because then consultants wouldn't be needed. I'm not saying it's a... Don't take that the wrong way, but that's a Typo 3, for example, very popular in Europe. They deliberately don't dumb down anything because they don't want stupid people to be able to use it. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's the same reason that Apple does what they do. They don't. The difference between Apple and Android, there's so many different flavours of Android. How do you support it? But with Apple, if you're on OS 7, there's only so many things you can break. Joomla sort of fits in the. Yeah, we can have a conversation about it. Joomla fits in the middle, where it's got the flexibility under the hood of Drupal, but it's always it has the eye candy has been important, even though it's been ridiculed. People have liked it, and it's connected with them, and they can do it. I think version 3 versus some of the earlier, I think 1.5 was probably our simplest version of Joomla that fit the mainstream. 2.5 and 3 are now going off into, it's getting very heavy. I think another reason for distributions is to reduce the complexity exposed to the user. So yeah, that's sort of where I see, and I'm getting the time mark. So thank you for listening. I hope it scored well on the interesting meter, and it was useful information for you.